Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Islamic Awakening with me, Reza Kazim. The devastation wreaked in contemporary Western financial systems in recent years has been attributed to the insatiable capitalistic drive for profitability at any cost. Capitalism is often dressed up positively as business enterprise. Can business enterprise really link to such diverse concepts as Islam and capitalism?
Western-style capitalism has created many problems in recent years, as witnessed by the collapse of the banking system. In Islamic economic theory, money is merely a medium of exchange, not a commodity to be traded. The Quran emphasizes honesty in all dealings, including financial transactions. Muslims are told not to cheat in their trade and to engage in business relationships that involve the gain of one party at the cost of another. The Quran states, "Deal not unjustly, and you shall not be dealt with unjustly."
When Islam is endorsed properly, like it has been endorsed in the era of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his immediate Khulafa, there was absolutely no problem with the global economy, knowing that the Islamic empire coexisted with one of the biggest empires of the time, which had totally different economical agenda, but Islam have conquered the world with its semi-capitalist and semi-socialist ideas by having Bayt al-Zakat, which has led to a global revolution in the banking sector.
Global market, basically, it's changed the whole theory of what Islam has taught us to do. Because when we go back into our ancestors, as in Islam, particularly talking about Muslims, we should be trading with gold dinars and golden coins instead of trading. And also, which is the most important key point, is try and evade bribery and how you call it, riba. You call it riba. So from the moment we start paying interest on each loan we take and everything, and markets taking loans, and we still have, so we're getting like a system into place which is abducting nations to be enslaved to the monetary system. And I think for the Muslim world, or for the Muslim populace nowadays, to get back into the normal situation, as much as for the whole situation in the world economics as well, I think people need to go back to the assets of Islam and assets and values of what the Quran taught us.
To address these and other issues, we have our esteemed guest, Professor Tariq Ramadan. Welcome to the program.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam. Just wanted to start off this program by asking you to give a brief definition, if you will, of what capitalism is actually about.
I think once again it's a very difficult definition, a very simple word that we are using every time, and it has to do with history and it has to do with the current system that we have. Even some economists are not talking about capitalism, they are talking about neoliberalism, by saying there is a slight difference between the old system and the new system. When we come back to economy, what is very important here is to before even talking about capitalism, is to understand what we are talking about when we speak about economy, because it's a very important concept, which means managing your goods and the way you are managing, distributing, production and distribution. This is economy, and economy is both at the same time a science, an experimental science and a human science, and you have projection on this. Where originally what we had is two systems: the socialist system, where the state is regulating the market, and when we speak about capitalism, this is a free market where we are thinking that the market itself is self-regulating between what is produced and what is going to be consumed by the people. And in this process, the most important thing is this individual input that is based on profit. And profit-wise, what we are trying to do is to sell and to buy. And in between, there is something which is this interest that we are talking about. And for us, when we speak about this, is interest and speculation and usury are the three concepts that are important from an Islamic viewpoint. Because this free market, the self-regulation, in fact, doesn't work very well. That, God's hand behind the system helping this to be regulated, it doesn't work. So we have a problem with the very essence of the capitalist system. We don't have a problem with free market, if and only if we are respecting some rules here when it comes to the rights and the duties of the people.
It's interesting, one of the points that you made was this definition of capitalism and then neoliberalism and so on. And I was just wondering, there's been capitalism has also delved into the colonial past where it was using enslavement as a way of actually enriching one group of people. And in that sense, when we'd start changing names and changing definitions maybe slightly, has much really changed in terms of what's actually been going on?
No, it's even worse than before. The only thing that was in the past, what we have today is globalization. And when we speak about globalization, we are speaking about globalization of economy, which is the world system, the economic system is based on this. And what you said at the beginning with your introduction is, when it comes to neoliberalism and capitalism, we have to ask ourselves, what is the essence of it? Are we talking here about an economy serving humanity, or are we talking here about a system, the only driving force within the system is profit? Which is the problem for us, because when you ask this question about any economic system, for us, the starting point is ask about the goals, the ends. What do you want to achieve? Do you want to achieve justice? Do you want to achieve well-being of people? If at the center, human beings are at the center of the economic system, it means that everything else are means. But if profit is at the center of your system, even human beings and nations are but means to this profit. And this is the neoliberal system. It's everything is means for the sake of profit. Whatever happens on the financial side or the economic side, the global economy is using people, using nations, and slavery is just one historical moment. But today, we are not talking about slavery in the same way, but if you look at the system, slavery is everywhere. Slavery is here in the European countries. Slavery is in the global south, where people are used just to make money. With the transnational corporation, the way they are dealing with people, when you can get only $1 per day to work as a slave, this is the new slavery that we are not talking about as if it's something of the past, but it's more regulated, it's more invisible, but it's still the same system.
And on common parlance, I mean, the number of issues that you raised here, but perhaps for the other program and the idea of slavery and so on. But one of the things that we talk about is business enterprise being confused with capitalism. That's a common kind of parlance and so on. How is this going to be viewed in terms of business enterprise, that is, in terms of from an Islamic perspective? What's different about it that we could say, okay, this is what Islamic business or Islamic system looks like?
Business enterprise, we don't have a problem with this depending on the goal that you have. And this is why you have it. It's very precise in the Quran. ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا الْبَيْعُ مِثْلُ الرِّبَى. This is because they are saying that trade is like interest. وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. But God has forbidden riba and permitted trade. Meaning what? Just to be involved. When you are involved in economy, that you are producing goods and you sell them and you have a profit, that's not a problem, because you have here a good, there is a trade, there is something based on an agreement, and it has to be transparent, and something has to be based on something that you sell and something that you buy. In our system today, harram al-riba means that you are selling and trying to get more. In fact, it's when money is producing money and not money being produced by the goods that you have. When the money, the financial system is not only a means but becomes the goals, this is where something is wrong. So the business enterprise is when, for example, trading the private property. In Islam, we don't have a problem with private property, even only if this is based on ethical terms, that you are not exploiting the people, that you are trading in a transparent way without corruption and not trying to make money out of money, but money out of your work. So anything which has to do with your own participation, your own risk, is welcome in Islam, that you take a risk. But just to use your money to make more money and to produce a system that is based on unjust terms of exchange, that is impossible from an Islamic perspective.
You mentioned a couple of things just now, and we could talk, and rather than asking about rules of governance of the financial system within the Islamic framework, perhaps you could elaborate a little bit more on the spirit of conduct.
Yes, that's a very important point. Why? Because what we have now with some of our brothers and sisters involved in economy and finance, they are calling something Islamic economy and Islamic finance. And very often when we talk to them, the philosophy of the global system is exactly the same. In fact, we want to make as much money as the system is making, but we want Islamic means. That's the problem. The problem that I'm talking about from the very beginning is the very goals of the system.
Can I just interrupt there? You said they're using Islamic means. So if you're using Islamic means and you don't achieve an Islamic objective, then is that, where are we with this?
Exactly, that this is where you are losing your objective. In fact, in order to check your means, you have first to check your goals. What do you want to achieve? And in fact, some of the so-called Islamic businesses or Islamic enterprises or Islamic banks, they want to make as much money as the others. They're saying, oh, okay, we are as efficient as this. But the point is not here. The point is, what is at the center of your system? Serving humanity or serving profit? It's to Islamize the profit just by changing the means and say, oh, you know what? This is not interest. This is not riba. This is administrative cost and expenses. That's not right. So this is why I would say here that we need to have a very deep thought on the system itself and to ask ourselves from an Islamic perspective, what should be the overall goals and aims of any economic system. And then we can come with the means. And the means are important here. We have always talking about prohibition of riba, prohibition of speculation, and working with zakat, and working with al-awqaf, and then participation. This is where we are promoting trade from an Islamic perspective. So today, what is important is to come to the ethical ground when it comes to economy. And you were saying something about, first the intention of the individual who is involved in the whole process, questioning your goals and questioning the means that you are using. No corruption, no speculation, and getting money out of the risks that you are taking where you sell your goods. This is something which is the starting point, not this obsession with profit, which is what we have in the neoliberal system. And then all the means that we have from an Islamic perspective that are regulating the way you deal with your personal capital, with your money, with the vision that you have at the center of an economy, which is based on human being. There is something which is called the right of the poor, which is never here in any capitalist system. The capitalist system is the right of the rich people and the powerful, not so much the right of the poor people.
Some people listening might well say that's all very well and very idealistic and so on. But one of the things is that you seem to almost be criticizing the idea of making a profit. Surely one of the reasons for doing this business or any venture would be that you should be making a profit. Otherwise, why go into this?
Yes, you are right. And if this is what is understood by what I'm saying, that's wrong. That's not what I mean. What I mean is right to make profit. It depends how, and it depends if it is a means to live and not the object or the objective of everything that you are doing. So my point is very much about don't transform the means into the goals. Profit are welcome in Islam. And it's not because you are rich that you are bad. It's not because you are poor that you are good. We don't have this kind of, it's very much coming from the Christian tradition that to be a good human being in ethical terms, you have to be poor. Islam is not saying this. You can be rich and good, and can be poor and bad, ethically speaking. The question is not this. The question is, yes, profit is welcome. It depends your intention, it depends the means, and it depends on the goals. This is what you have to check from an ethical viewpoint. So don't only Islamize the means and be capitalistic as to the goals, and don't only Islamize formally the goals and use un-Islamic means. It's a whole global concept here, which is important, which is questioning the global economic system that we have today. So we should avoid being simplistic on this, because to tell you the truth today, if we are serious about our Islamic references, we don't have an alternative to the global economic system. We have some principles, some goals, but we don't know how to deal with them. And we try to come with a management which is more Islamic, which is, a niche of halal mechanisms within an ocean of haram, a haram system. This is what we have today.
Thank you. We like to keep this show as interactive as possible and really value your opinion. Here is what you sent us this week.
This week we asked, what is the relationship between Islam and capitalism? Ali from the UK says, Islamic concepts of capitalism can be found in Quranic support for and protection of individual rights to private property and commercial honesty. Tarab from the UK says, the laws regarding business and trade are very clearly defined within the religion. There are clear boundaries and restrictions, so even to begin, Islamically, pure capitalism is not an option because there will never be an absolutely free market. And that's all the comments we have for this week. Be sure to follow our Facebook page and Twitter.
It's interesting you said that one of the things is that the ocean of haram with a few droplets, if you like, of halal stuff mixed up within it. And this idea that if we don't actually have an alternative Islamic financial system that works, have we? So is there a problem with this?
Yes, there is a problem, because in fact, if you look at what's happening today, this neoliberal system that is protecting less than 10% of human beings around the world, this is the reality of it. And more than 100 to 150,000 people are now the victims of the system silently. That's not going to work. That's not right. That's not ethical. And you have something which is very important from an Islamic perspective. وَذَرُوا مَا بَقِيَ مِنَ الرِّبَا. What you have in the Quran is leave what is the rest of the speculation is coming to the Muslims at the time of revelation. وَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا فَأْذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. If you don't do this, you have to be prepared to a war against God and the messenger. Meaning the system is a realm of war if you are using money to kill people. Because it's not only weapons that are killing people, it's mainly money. And in fact, all the weapons are done for the sake of money. So we have to think about this, and we cannot just sit down and say, you know what, there is no alternative. This is what the neoliberal people are saying, that are supporting the system. There is no alternative. Look, the free market is the only way forward. And now, after the last crisis, we heard some economists, Stiglitz and Soros, telling us, you know what you need? We need a regulated capitalism. And I even heard some Muslim scholars saying, it's exactly what we are talking about as Muslims. Islam is promoting a regulated capitalism. No, that's not right. You cannot regulate the system at the center of which there is only profit. Make money by all means necessary. No, we can't do that as Muslims.
Can I ask, why is an Islamic financial system not up and running? Because if it was, then you could say, okay, here is a model, and this is what should be followed. So why isn't that there?
Because I think that what we have around the world today is all the Muslim majority countries and the states are involved in the global economic system, and they don't want an alternative. Even, we are so rich. Look at the Gulf states. Look at Africa. All the resources that they have, they're all stolen. Because of history, because of colonialism. That's true. Colonialism is still there. We don't have political colonialism, but we have economic imperialism, and this is the reality of it. But still, we cannot just blame the others when we see what the Gulf states are doing with gas and oil and all this money. It's under the supervision, under the control of big power, the great powers of the world, and the transnational corporations that are using this. At the end, we have to ask ourselves, do we really want an alternative? Instead of speaking about Islam in formal political terms, we need to speak about Islam in deep economic terms. And this is where it's important. Don't speak to me about democracy if you don't start to speak about social justice. And social justice has to do with economy, has to do to speak about, how do you deal with zakat, the poor, the right of the poor, how do you deal with regulating profit? Yes, you can. Yes, you can make profit. Yes, you can be involved in the economic system, as long as your goals are not to exploit people, is not to kill people for the sake of your money, for the sake of your profit, which is what is happening today.
And are there businesses that, if we move on to that, that are not allowed, or business enterprises that are not allowed within Islam, or businesses perhaps that are allowed but frowned upon and so on? How does that work? Because you mentioned a couple of things while you were speaking earlier.
Yes, I think that from an Islamic perspective, everything which we know from your religious viewpoint that is not permitted in Islam, you can't do. For example, anything which has to do with alcohol, you have to avoid that. When it comes to, for example, banking and interest and speculation, if you are involved in speculation, meaning that you can decide today the survival of people in Africa in the coming 4 or 5 years, the way you are playing with this, you can't be involved in this, because speculation is wrong, and then you are playing with human lives. So this is also something which is important here. And then you can go to details when it comes to some of the goods that you have that are not acceptable from an Islamic perspective. And then you can even go deeper than that. For me, for example, I would say, I'm a practicing Muslim. I'm trying my best. I live in the West. And I would say, yes, there is nothing haram about, being involved with drinking non-alcoholic drinks, for example. But I would avoid some, because these transnational corporations, they are attacking, the cultural way we are dealing with our drinks, for example. You go to African countries and you are drinking the transnational corporational, production when it comes to all these things that we are drinking there. I say no, avoid that. I don't think that this is right. So, economy is not only the way you deal with money, it's also the way you drink, it's always the way you eat. What do you eat? What do you drink? I would like African people in the global south, in the Middle East, in Asia and Africa, to drink much more local productions than these transnational corporations. I would say, there is something which is haram that we know when it comes from the Quran, alcohol and all these things. And then you have to think about the context, you have to think about the global economy. And some of these drinks you have to avoid. And even, for example, some scholars are not so clear about smoking. It's a makruh, that it's unliked, it's something that you have to avoid. In my view, as a Muslim scholar, I would say no. You can't pay money to buy something that is destroying your health while people need to eat today. So I would avoid that, and I would say don't be involved in anything which has to do with that.
It's interesting, and you also mentioned something about weapons and the banking system going into weapons. Can you comment very briefly on that?
Yes, but once again, of course, weapons sometimes to resist and to defend ourselves, we can be involved in this. Now we have to think about the global thing, the nuclear weapon and things like this. We may ask the ethical question, what are the limits of us being involved in producing weapons, because this is killing people. And there is an ethical ground that we have to discuss as Muslims. It's not done enough. We are very far, and we are within a competition in economic terms that sometimes is pushing us to miss the point about our ethical objectives.
The debate on how to build a credible Islamic alternative to the capitalistic framework will continue. Is it even possible to build a financial system that will create a climate to allow the Muslims to come closer to their creator and serve the created? Or perhaps the more important point is that Muslims must always strive to do so. The time is up for today's topic. I would like to thank Professor Tariq Ramadan
Thank you.
for his views on this topic, and of course all of you at home for watching. Goodbye until the next time and another edition of Islamic Awakening.